Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I am here today to react to the 2021 winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature. It went to Abdulrazak Gurnah, quote, for his uncompromising and compassionate penetration of the effects of colonialism and the fate of the refugee in the gulf between cultures and continents. If you know me, you know I love book awards. I love looking into them. I love them as tools of discovery. And that's one reason I really like the Nobel Prize for Literature, because it is ostensibly, at least, we'll get into it, a global prize, and a lot of the time I have not really heard of some of the authors, or I'm less familiar with their work. So I love looking at prizes like the Nobel Prize for Literature as a way of discovering new authors I might want to read, and that is kind of what this year is doing for me. Now, I feel like I should state up front that because I have not read Abdulrazak Gurnah's work, this is not intended as a review. I've had a couple of people comment on recent reactions to Booker Prize long lists and short lists and the National Book Award long list and short list and things like that, saying, I don't know how you can review these books if you haven't read them. I'm not trying to review these books. If you thought I was, I can see why you would be getting frustrated, but I am not trying to review anything or make a comment about the quality of anything. I am simply trying to react to the winner, ultimately how that winner fits in with the grand scheme of that prize, because, you know, every prize has an evolution and a personality, and the winners that they choose say something about the prize. And the Nobel Prize for Literature is particularly a prize that has been having a bit of an identity crisis over the last decade, and we will really get into that. So the winners that they choose say a lot about the prize. Because I like to use prizes as tools of discovery, I also like to look at the works and determine if this is an author that I would be interested in pursuing and reading more of. So I am not trying to review any of Abdulrazak Gurnah's work. I should just say that right now. And I will also get into a little bit of the politics behind the Nobel Prize for Literature. A lot of people get upset when I do this because they say that the Nobel Prize for Literature is not a political prize. It's political. It has always been political. And I don't think you can separate the Nobel Prize for Literature from politics at all. We'll get into that as well. So I really look forward to hearing what people say in the comments down below. But, you know, I'm just going to invite you right now, if you are excited about this win or this winner, please let me know in the comment section down below. I have a lot to say on the topic, and let's kind of get into it. We'll get to Abdulrazak Gurnah toward the end. Just basic facts: he is a Tanzanian-born writer who has been living in the UK, and he has been writing a lot about the effects of colonialism and what life is like as a refugee, because he is a refugee. But we'll get to him a lot more toward the end. I think because the Nobel Prize has been having something of an identity crisis, it's important to look at what his win says and how it meets what they have been trying to do for the last few years. I will give you a quick background on Gurnah from the New York Times, which says Gurnah was born in 1948 and grew up on the island of Zanzibar in the Indian Ocean, but arrived in England as a refugee by the end of the 1960s. He has published 10 novels and a number of short stories. The theme of the refugees' disruption runs throughout his work. Now, look, I know a lot of people resist this idea, as I said, but political factors always come into consideration with awards of any stripe. And this feels especially true with the Nobel Prize, which, again, has been desperately trying to reinvent itself over the last few years. Last year's winner, Louise Gluck, and I will put a link in the description box down below to my reaction to her win. She was widely considered a worthy winner, but she was also considered something of a safe choice after years of controversy over the Nobel Prize. But even then, there was criticism that the Nobel Committee had perpetuated a recurring problem, that the winners of the prize are overwhelmingly white and either European or North American. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. First, let's talk a little bit about why Louise Gluck was considered a safe choice, or a bit of a course correction for the Nobel Prize. And that's because in 2019, there were two prizes that were given by the Nobel Prize for Literature. They had to take a year off in 2018 because of allegations of sexual harassment and corruption. So they took a year off because 7 members of the Swedish Academy that oversee the Nobel Prize for Literature were forced to resign, and they could not give a prize until they filled out the rest of the seats that needed to make those decisions. But they had said that they would give a winner for 2018. It was just going to happen a year late. So they announced 2 winners in 2019. And the first one, Olga Tokarczuk, was not controversial at all. Most people were very happy to see her win. Peter Handke was the other winner, and he was the problematic selection. Peter Handke has frequently denied the existence of war crimes and been an apologist for the Serbian dictator who perpetrated a genocide on Bosnia, including in his writing. And since the Nobel Prize for Literature is for a body of work, it includes all of that writing. So rewarding him with a Nobel Prize was not a good look for the Nobel Prize, especially after they had sort of stated that they were going to do better, and especially coming off of that wild controversy that meant that they had to take a year off from awarding a prize. Before those controversies, the Nobels seemed to be on a trajectory toward becoming more of a populist prize. Winners in the 2010s seemed to be skewing toward names that would be familiar to a majority of readers. Winners like Bob Dylan, certainly. He was someone that a lot of people had wanted to see win the Nobel Prize for Literature, even though he is not known as a writer of books or short stories. He is a songwriter, and awarding him stretched the boundary of what literature is, but it also seemed to be a sort of nod to a popular choice that people wanted to see win a Nobel Prize for Literature. You could even lump Kazuo Ishiguro into this as well, because he is a much more known author. He is a Booker Prize winner, or at least known within Europe and North America. So that seemed to be the direction the prize was going. But then after this hiatus that they had to take, and the new people that they had to bring into the organization, it seemed like that direction changed very abruptly, and they have been rewarding more quote-unquote serious literature once again. And even with that focus on sort of capital L literature, Louise Gluck seemed to offer exactly what the Nobel Prize needed when they gave her the prize last year, a winner that everyone can get behind. But Gluck did not meet the Swedish Academy's stated intention to have more diverse winners. The vast majority of winners, again, have been white, male, and come from either Europe or North America. And while Gluck is obviously a woman, she did not meet the rest of the criteria that they had stated that they wanted to do better. Now, I can feel a lot of people bracing themselves to go off in the comment section. So let me just say this. I think the Swedish Academy's stated intention to focus on diversity is a good thing. You can't call yourself a global award if your winners are not global. It's that simple. There's also a much more insidious thing that goes on with that. When most of your winners are white, male, and either European or North American, it perpetuates the idea that the people who are white, male, European, or North American are the only people whose art matters and who can be taken seriously. And a lot of people want to deny that, but this is a very prestigious prize that a lot of people know about and a lot of people pay attention to, so it does matter. Now, you're probably getting ready to furiously type in the comment section down below, what about European writers? Should they be overlooked simply to correct a history of negligence? Well, yes. If you're making a case that the Swedish Academy's status quo should stand, you are essentially agreeing that white male writers are the only ones that matter. Let's take a quick look at some stats. Only 16 women have won the Nobel Prize for Literature. That's less than 14%. 102 men, in comparison, have won the Nobel Prize for Literature. 41 of the 117 laureates for the Nobel Prize for Literature have come from either France, the United States, or the United Kingdom. Those are the 3 countries that have the most winners. And 41 of the total winners have come from those 3 countries. That means that 35% of the winners have come from the same 3 countries. 58 winners of the Nobel Prize for Literature wrote in either English, French, or German. That's almost 50%. And again, the sort of insidious message that you are sending when that is the overwhelming majority of the people who have won the prize is that these are the areas that matter, that those are the languages that matter. And the final stat I will cover here is that Abdulrazak Gurnah is only the 4th Black winner out of 117. I could go on, but I'm going to stop with the stats right there and just say that those stats reflect a pretty terrible imbalance. Now, I'm not advocating that white people or male writers or European writers or North American writers should not be allowed to win the Nobel Prize for literature. What I am saying is that people from other backgrounds should be given equal weight and an equal opportunity to win as well. So far, the Swedish Academy has done precious little to live up to its stated commitment toward diversity, and it really needs to start doing that. And I get it, judging literature in other parts of the world is really difficult. The Swedish Academy is based in Sweden, obviously, and most of the people who have been part of it are from Sweden, and as such, they are very familiar with European writers. They are very familiar with European history because North America is so prevalent in their world as well. They are very familiar with our writers and our culture and our history. So a writer from a different continent is likely to have a very different style, a very different approach, and different ways of thinking about literature. And it can be difficult for somebody from one area to understand what a writer from a different area is doing. I understand that. But again, if you call yourself a global award, you need to make the effort to do that. And so far, the Swedish Academy has talked a lot, but not actually done much. On paper, Abdulrazak Gurnah is a move in the right direction. But here's the thing. Gurnah has lived in the UK since the late 1960s. All of his writing was produced while he was living in the UK. Yes, his writing was informed by his status as a refugee, and I don't want to take that away from him. And I don't want to use where he lives as a mark against him. He was 18 when he fled Zanzibar, so it's fair to say that where he originally comes from has colored his entire career as a writer. But I also have to say, it feels hollow to celebrate that a Tanzanian writer won the Nobel Prize for Literature when they have been living in the UK for over 50 years. And again, I don't want to take Gurnah's heritage away from him. He is a Tanzanian writer. That is fair. But this is a step. It appears to be a good one. We're going to get into the quality of his writing and the subject of his writing in a minute. But we need more steps. And that's all I'm going to say about that. If you have thoughts, please just be civil in the comment section down below. My Nobel Prize reactions have been some of the more controversial videos I have put on this channel because people get very heated about this topic. And you can tell I definitely have thoughts and opinions about it. I wouldn't say I'm heated about it, but I definitely have thoughts. And I would love to hear what yours are about all of that down below. And again, this is a step. It seems to be a good step, but we need more steps in the future. Now, I don't want to run through all of Gurnah's work. When I was looking at his biography this morning, the two books that seemed to be the most popular are also the ones that caught the attention of the Booker Prize. One of these was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. The other one was longlisted for it. So let's look at brief descriptions of the plots of these two books and sort of use that as an entry into his career and what his writing is like. And the first one is Paradise, which was published in 1994. Now, I am getting these blurbs from the New York Times, which put together an article with blurbs from all of their reviews of Gurnah's work, and I will put a link to that article in the description box down below. Please check it out if you would like a quick overview of his works. It is really handy for that. So, Paradise, 1994. Shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 1994, this novel opens in East Africa before World War I and follows 12-year-old Yusuf, who has been handed over to a wealthy merchant as an indentured servant. Throughout the book, Yusuf recounts his excursions across the continent along with the natural life, other tribes, and threats they encounter. Our reviewer called it a poignant meditation on the nature of freedom and the loss of innocence for both a single sensitive boy and an entire continent. And that sounds really interesting to me. There was only one of his books that was available at my library, and I think it was this one. It might have been By the Sea, but I think it was this one, and I might actually put a hold on it, sort of bookmark it. I don't want to get to it right now, but I would be very interested in reading that book. And knowing that my library has it, it is something that I'd probably bookmark maybe for next year, because I would be very curious to experience Gurnah's point of view and see what it is like in this book, because that sounds fascinating. And spoiler alert, By the Sea also sounds really fascinating to me. Now, the blurb for By the Sea, which was published in 2001, says, fleeing lawlessness and corruption, Salah Omar, a 65-year-old merchant from Zanzibar, applies for asylum in England. The book details casual cruelty from British immigration officials and a dystopian bureaucracy that underpins the resettlement efforts as Saleh is eventually shuttled to a quiet seaside town. By chance, he meets the son of the man who caused great suffering for Saleh and his family, and their eventual friendship is a reconciliation of their family histories. As our reviewer wrote, it is extraordinarily moving when Saleh Omar does find his own kind of refuge in friendship, an asylum made of experience that is shared. And again, that book sounds really fascinating. I sort of skimmed other books in that article, but I really focused in on these two, and both of them sound like books I would really be interested in reading. So it seems like Gurnah is a worthy winner, and I don't want to take that away from him, despite any criticism I made. The criticism is not really of him. It seems like he is a worthy winner, by the way. I haven't read any of his books. The criticism is more of the Swedish Academy and what it says it wants to do. So I don't have any problem with Gurnah. I'm not trying to pee in the pool for anybody who is excited. I feel genuinely excited to read both of these books, and I would love to hear what you think of the descriptions of those books, of his work, or any of the others. If you have read anything, I would love to hear it, because this immediately seems like a writer that I would be interested in. And that is, again, why I think awards like the Nobel Prize for Literature are so important, because I had not heard of Abdulrazak Gurnah until this morning when the prize was announced. And now I'm very interested in pursuing his work. And that is the power of this prize. And that is also why the stated intention of the Swedish Academy is so important, because the light deserves to be shown in different areas, and everybody deserves equal access to this prize given the stated intention of what it is trying to do. Now, because of the way the Nobel Prize is structured, you don't really know who else was potentially in the running. There were a lot of names floated around in betting in the days leading up to the award announcement. I tend not to pay attention to those because I feel like they are never really accurate. They tend to just reflect a sort of wish fulfillment of people who enjoy following this prize, rather than any sense of what is actually going to win. And I understand it's really difficult to get a sense of where the Swedish Academy is going to go, but I just feel like they are extremely rarely accurate at all. In fact, last year, I think the lists that included Louise Gluck on their prediction list basically dismissed her chances outright, and she ended up winning. And I looked at a couple of predictions lists for this year and didn't see Abdulrazak Gurnah's name on any of them. But I would like to mention the name that most people had floated around as the most likely winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature for 2021, and that was Annie Ernaux, who is a French writer. And her writing sounds very interesting, but I can see where the Swedish Academy wanted to get away from that sense of the same criticism they got for Louise Gluck, where yes, they gave it to a worthy winner, but they gave it to another white person, another European person. Louise Gluck is actually American, but it's within the same three countries that have won the most awards. France is the one that has the most. So I can see why they wanted to get away, but I want to read a blurb about Annie Ernaux's work from the New York Times. According to the New York Times, the favorite is Annie Ernaux, a French author who since the 1970s has been penning bestsellers about events in her life, including a back-alley abortion that gave insight into how her country is changing. She would be France's 18th winner. Ultimately, she did not win the prize, and I've seen a couple of sort of backdoor criticism now where it's like, oh, of course she didn't win. She's mostly a memoirist. But the Nobel Prize has certainly strained what the definition of literature is before, and they could certainly do it again. So I wouldn't be surprised if her name floats around again next year. And we'll see what happens with that. But I wanted to mention her in particular because she seemed to be the front runner in the eyes of many other people. How close she actually came to winning, we may never know. But that blurb from the New York Times really got me interested in seeking out her work, so I thought it was worth sharing. Now, again, I would love to hear what you think about the Nobel Prize in general, about its stated intention toward diversity, and this year's winner, and all of that stuff, or anything that I've said, but please keep it civil. Let's all respect each other's opinions and backgrounds. And again, it was not my intention at all to do a review of Abdulrazak Gurnah's work. Again, I can't because I haven't read it. I am trying to approach this as someone who is using the Nobel Prize for Literature as a tool of discovery and using it to shine a light on an author and get a sense of whether or not this is someone I'd like to pursue. In this case, this is an author I would very much like to read at some point in the future. So let me know if you feel the same or if you feel differently. Again, just keep it civil in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate it if you leave comments and thoughts that are respectful, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.